Life Audio.
But not the expectation that my needs will be met, my expectation of my kids that they would do their homework, but my anticipation and expectation that there's some really beautiful things right around the corner.
Looking to grow your faith but short on time? The Holy Reads app is your answer. With over 1,000 book summaries, daily devotionals, and more, you can find inspiration anytime, anywhere. From parenting tips to theological insights, Holy Reads has something for everyone. Want to deepen your connection with God? Holy Reads offers a wealth of resources to help you grow spiritually. From scripture-based content to soothing meditations, you can find peace and purpose in your daily life. Holy Reads is more than just an app. It's a community of faith. With 23 categories, you can find resources that speak to your heart. Join 350,000 Christians who use Holy Reads daily. Download Holy Reads today and start your spiritual journey. That's HOLYREADS. Download the app today.
Hey friends, Sadie Rob Huff here, and I am so excited to tell you about my new book, The Next Step, 50 Devotions to Find Your Way Forward. If you're like me, you probably had times in your life when you felt stuck, like you were unable to change direction from your current path or unsure where you would even go if you could change course. Well, even in these moments, it's so important for us to know that we're never not moving. We're always moving towards something. I wrote The Next Step for anyone who is searching for God's purpose in their life or guidance in the season that they're in. Inside, we'll walk together through 10 weeks of devotion centered on the wisdom books of the Bible, and I'm going to share practical ideas for steps that you can take in your walk with God each day. This book is filled with scripture, reflection prompts, and even some of my favorite worship songs for you to listen to as you go about your days. I'm so excited for you to start your journey. You can get your copy of The Next Step in print, audiobook, or ebook now at Amazon or anywhere books are sold.
Hello and welcome to the Encourager Podcast, where we have encouraging conversations to help you joyfully harmonize your home and work life. I'm your host, Rebecca Scott. I'm a wife, mother, designer, coach, and author. I'm here to help encourage and empower you to confidently make decisions that work for you and your stage of life, whatever that might be. Hello, Encouragers. Today's podcast is brought to you by Just Thrive Probiotics, my go-to supplement to feel more energized and lighter. I also love the Just Thrive Calm supplement to keep my thoughts from spinning and keep them more focused and in the moment. Use code Encourager to get 15% off by going to justthrive.com. On today's episode, we are talking with one of my favorite people, Bob Goff, who is a husband, dad, a grandpa, an author, a coach, and also a chief balloon maker. And I've gotten the amazing privilege of going to get to see him and meet him at Oaks. Their awesome location in California. Someday, I still have it written down. Someday we're going to do a ranch rodeo. We're just going to host a South Dakota rodeo in California and tell them what fun we can have out there. Welcome to the podcast, Bob.
Oh, thanks a million. It's so good to see you. Great to be on and be talking to some of the people listening.
Yes. So we are having you on because you have yet another book coming out. And I got the special privilege, I think it was special, to read through a little pre-release, and it's going to be so good. It's called Catching Whimsy. Tell me why this book is different than the other ones.
Yeah, I want to write books. I think people that author most books want to encourage people. And so most of the books that I write are really for the guy that's or gal that's church adjacent. They're keeping a safe distance, which is probably a pretty good idea. But this one, I wanted to tie together some of the things in faith that make sense to me between some of the scriptures that I've read and some of the experience that I've had. One of the things that Jesus did, he always talked to people in stories. And so sometimes in the morning, I'd rather read a paragraph-long story than have somebody give me information because I've got all the information I need. I don't need to raise my awareness about this and that. And so it's not a bad thing to get information, but I think what we need is examples. And so the people that I've come across, the things that I've seen that were great examples and reminders to me, I wanted to collect those in one place. So that's what I did. We called it Catching Whimsy. It isn't about gain more information. What a bad title for a book. But when you're a kid, if you blow a bubble and you catch it on the bubble, it takes this kind of, there's an intentionality about it. But then there's that joy. And then underneath a layer of whimsy is a mile of strategy. Like, why you're doing what you're doing. So sometimes people think about whimsy as confetti and glitter and unicorns. But it's joy with purpose, joy with plan.
I like that idea too, because where the stage of life that I am in, and I imagine a lot of the listeners are too, is that we are really focused on routines because it gives us comfort and it allows us to accomplish goals, when we're using our strategy and we're getting the kids where they need to be and we're feeding their bellies, but yet we still have these big dreams. And so I like this idea of catching whimsy because it allows us to, I use this phrase pretty frequently, to zoom out, to kind of look at like, how do we pursue whimsy when we are still admittedly stuck in the routine and still have to do the routine? Like we still have to feed them and get them where they need to go. But how do you think this book will help us break free from all of that routine?
So maybe instead of just, and I think I talked about that years ago in a different context, a different book, but the idea of like good manners night and bad manners night. Like we would have good manners night and teach the kids when they were young how to pick up on the left and serve on the right or whatever it is and where the fork goes and all that. Then we'd have bad manners night and we would just end up with a food fight. So uh, to like say, what are the things that we're doing and is there a way to make it more meaningful, more memorable? Because at the end of the day, we just get these very few moments here alive to make some memories, and so I really want to be intentional about that. And not every day needs to be Disneyland, but doesn't mean a couple of them don't. So like that whole idea is there a way to upgrade this experience? Is there a way to instead of the drive home, can we like pull off unexpectedly and go on a treasure hunt? And it's not about silly stuff. It's about being super purposeful and engaging. What about starting to geocache messages for kids everywhere you go? And then for them to do it for their kids someday, even if you might have littles, like that idea of to just say, can we make today a little bit more special, a little bit more meaningful? Not just for our kids, and it isn't like being the party clown that comes with balloon animals. It's and a parent, a loved one that comes with an idea, a purpose. If I came over to your house, I would not come empty handed. Like I'd have a bottle of wine, a loaf of bread, I'd have something. And so, what if we show up with our friends, not with a bottle of wine or a pie, but show up, and you can do that as well. But show up with a thought. Like I wanted to share this thought, and it's not about what you think about the world and you're now giving more information, but to say, I want to contribute an idea here. The first coin that was ever minted in the United States, on one side it said, "We are one," which is really beautiful for if faith guides your steps, John 17. That's how Jesus was talking to his dad. He said, "We're one. I don't want everybody else to be one." But on the other side, it says, "Mind your business." I love that. So if I came over to your house, then maybe what I might have in mind before then is that first coin. But wouldn't it be awesome if 3 days before I just bought that coin and I brought it over and I left it with you guys? And you'd feel like that's actually kind of a neat thing. And each time they knew when this person comes over, they're going to bring a little fun with them. They're going to bring a little intentionality. It'll be this thoughtfulness to say, I want to be out in front of that. But when I travel around, I carry little medals with me in my backpack, and I love giving people little medals to say, "Way to go!" Like that's awesome. And it's, I guess it's a little eccentric, but like be a little eccentric. What makes that unusual is that everybody doesn't do it, and I think it's unusual that everybody doesn't do it.
Yeah. Oh, so we've been doing a few of these. I didn't know it at the time, but now that you're talking about it, I'm like, okay, we do a few of those in our house. We call it a rodeo roundup, and we pull up to well, we live in the country, so there's not a stoplight, but there's a stop sign. And then everybody gets out and you have to like run 2 laps around the car, and whoever ends up in the driver's seat gets to drive. Now,
Yeah.
within reason, everybody, but it's so much fun. And I thought it was just, whimsical for our own family. And well, then my niece and nephews are asking for it. And then any of the play dates ask for the rodeo roundup. So
Yeah.
it's just a way of like you said, just inserting something that didn't interrupt the routine at all. We still arrived where we needed to arrive, maybe a little bit later than anticipated, but it still like put a little bit of whimsy, a little bit like this should be the fun years.
Yeah, I mean, even yesterday, I don't know why it came to mind, but most of my life, I've had a 1971 Volkswagen bus, and I just love them. I don't know how many I've had, like half a dozen or more. And then ultimately, I'll give it to somebody, and then they'll sell it to make rent or like whatever. But it's been a couple years since I've had one, and yesterday, one came up for sale. in Colorado for like the price of 4 bagels. So I bought it sight unseen, and it's like a really cheap car. Like it's about like the price of a expensive bicycle. So I bought this a thing, and it's getting shipped out now. I haven't told anybody. And it'll be just such a fun project car. We'll like paint it red again. There's $200, and maybe
Right?
put some new tires on it. That's $200. And it's like what I like about these cars is everything costs about $200.
Nice. Yes.
So
Yes.
I don't need another car. I don't need another project, but I need more whimsy. I need more of that idea with these great little grandkids that I've got. They're not great grandkids, they're great, comma, grandkids. Um, but that idea, and then their moms and dads, they all remember cruising around to In-N-Out Burger, and we'd pull in. Oh, and the thing about this bus that I like, it has a sunroof. That's what did it.
Oh,
I've
fancy.
always had a 71, but never with a sunroof. And so I'm like,
Oh boy.
this is going to be fun. And it's just worked. It's just worked. Doesn't look rusty from the 3 pictures I saw, but it definitely looks worked. And I thought this will be so fun. And it is, I'm looking for more activity in my life. Like you and I are like making coffee nervous. We're just like, go.
Yes.
But more whimsy, more joy, another memory, fixing that thing up. And I'm sure I'll give this one away too.
Gosh, I think it's so important. I think you should have a permanent balloon. You probably do a permanent balloon thing so that balloons just always stick out of the skylight at all times.
Yeah, there's always bubbles coming out of the chimney. Wouldn't that be fun though? If you've got a chimney,
Oh my
send a
gosh,
couple
yes.
bubbles up there.
Yes, we will have to stop and get a ride in this. I'm gonna make that part of my bucket list ideas here. Tell us how the listeners can apply some of these ideas of whimsy that you're talking about. How can we apply that and faith in our very own lives in the most practical way? So you mentioned a couple objects that we could do. Is there any other things practically to keep remembering we need to catch the whimsy that is around us?
Yeah, like nobody adopts children by accident. You don't say like, wait, how did they? What the heck? Who is that anyway? Do you have a name, little one? Like it's very intentional. And so whimsy isn't something that just like comes upon you because you happen to be on Main Street at Disneyland. While it's a very winsome place, there's something about just being really like direct, is focus and intent on saying, I'm going to pursue joy. I'm going to pursue whatever level of spontaneity fits you. And in our culture, we put a high value on lots of arm waving and yippee skippy and funny and all that. In other cultures, not so much. They would think that would be kind of a very much an outlier and kind of maybe looked down upon as not respectful. So it isn't that the goal is a bunch of energy released into the room, but the goal is to say, who am I? And how can I live into this version of me? If faith guides your steps, you're not trying to say what's a better version of me, but just what's a more accurate reflection of my faith. But if faith doesn't guide your steps, just say, hey, what's something that's going to outlast me? Like what's something that's matter more than this brief period of time that I hear? And that would be a nexus between whatever guides your steps. And part of it is just not be presumptuous. Don't be like we're doing right now. Just don't be presumptuous. If you have a belief or a thing, don't presume everybody else does, and don't presume to tell people what to do with it. However, for me, what we're going to do is find joy around here. We're going to find it in small and big ways. So it won't be the big grand gesture. It will be just finding a hurting neighbor. You don't need to go across an ocean. Go across the street, find somebody who's in need, and just say, man, I'm so glad you're my neighbor, and here's why. And it's not because now, like, can I borrow your tractor?
Right.
Can I
It's
have
got to be
helper?
before that. Mhm.
Yeah, there's nothing on the other side of the equal sign. And there's something beautiful about that. And then create lasting places. You mentioned the Oaks. And if you want to make a bunch of money, get a Chick-fil-A. But if you want to make a bunch of difference, make a safe place for people to come. And you get to make that. You can go to Starbucks and make a safe place for $6 a drink. Like you can make your living room a safe place. You can make the schoolroom your safe place. But find a place and then have people come where they just know I'm going to be better for having gone. And you do that in the people that you encounter, the way that you do some stuff in the marketplace that's really high quality, but you also create these safe places. I've been in those places with you and your husband. I think that is your heartbeat. And you've got day jobs, you've got things, just like people listening. But to say, what if I show up with something in my hands? I'm not showing up empty-handed today. I'm going to show up a little joy, a little whimsy, and to say, what will that look like today? Like, and it's always something within reach.
Looking to grow your faith but short on time? The Holy Reads app is your answer. With over 1,000 book summaries, daily devotionals, and more, you can find inspiration anytime, anywhere. From parenting tips to theological insights, Holy Reads has something for everyone. Want to deepen your connection with God? Holy Reads offers a wealth of resources to help you grow spiritually. From scripture-based content to soothing meditations, you can find peace and purpose in your daily life. Holy Reads is more than just an app. It's a community of faith. With 23 categories, you can find resources that speak to your heart. Join 350,000 Christians who use Holy Reads daily. Download Holy Reads today and start your spiritual journey. That's HOLYREADS. Download the app today.
This December, on the Salvation Army's Words of Life podcast, we'll be joined by worship leader, pastor, speaker, April Christina Farmer. She joins our host, Bernie Dake, to share her testimony as the two discuss the importance of living life with a grateful heart.
Now, just hearing the stories from my husband, because there's so much I don't remember, was the people of God. The investments that you make down through the years in those relationships and the body of Christ that you build relationship with, they came together and they prayed for me. And people feel that all the time, like, how in the world? Why would you let this person go? Why would you let me walk through that? Why would you allow this sickness to overtake my body? And Jesus is like, I know it's tough, but you don't know what's coming. I do. Will you trust me?
Listen to the Salvation Army's Words of Life wherever you listen to podcasts or visit wordsoflifepodcast.org.
I love that there's so many permissions that you're given, especially in the stage of life for myself, is that this doesn't mean you're going to completely change the trajectory of your life. It's not like this huge dream big, although you have a very good book about that as well. But these are just daily tiny habits that you can start, and mindset shifts. Like this phrase is what I'm taking away, among other things, is what will outlast me?
Yeah.
What will outlast me? That's fantastic viewpoint. Yeah.
A little greater shelf life, a lot of our time, and I understand why. Is spent thinking, will this work? So we want to do a business venture, we want a vacation, we want to, whatever it is, a relationship. Hey, will this work? And then what I want to do is give it a quarter of a twist and say, will this last? And so there's plenty of things I've done that have worked, and even a longer list of things that didn't. But to say, will this last? And very few of the things actually both worked and lasted. And so what I want to do is more and more, I want to emphasize. So really drilling down and getting practical. So you get that if your children are part of your lived experience, then you'd say, okay, I got to get them mostly clothed and partially fed today. And so what if instead of just running out of the bedroom and down to breakfast and like, did you make your bed and all that? When our son, Adam, was coming down, very like fun, joyful kid, like everybody's kids start out that way. But the first thing I'd ask him every morning is, did you make your bed? It was such a buzzkill. Because the answer was always no. And then I'd say, well, go upstairs and make your bed. And then we started 7 out of 7 days that way. And I thought, I am not doing that anymore. So we got him a portaledge from rock climbing days. If you were halfway up Half Dome, you'd hang it from a carabiner. We bought him a sleeping bag, and he slept hanging from the ceiling for the next 5 years, like a bat, except he wasn't upside down. And the whole idea is that he was happy in the sleeping bag. He thought he was camping every night. I was happy because he wasn't having to make his bed. And our conversations were better because I wasn't starting the day as the hall monitor of his behavior. So we are not going to spend our days like monitoring people's behaviors, either our children's or everybody else's. There can be some crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'm not the hall monitor. I'm not calling everybody. I'm not calling balls and strikes. I'm not, and it isn't the absence of opinions. I'm a lawyer. I've got an opinion about everything.
Okay.
And I usually think I'm right, even when I'm flat wrong. But here's the deal. I just want to show up and try to think, I wonder what is going on under the hood that would make somebody come up with this kind of what seems like an outlandish worldview rather than waving a bony finger in their direction. Kind of get to know them. Ask them, what's the last time you laughed so hard milk came out of your nose? Or what's a time when you've been really embarrassed and what did you do next? Almost like those questions you might ask the kids around the table. Go get those questions. Like get a box of questions and flip through them. You can even stack the deck. If you think like one of your kids might be sweet on somebody, say like, so who's the newest, most important person to you?
Yes, yes. This is so.
Stack the deck.
We started doing something similar because we live in the country. We make a lot of trips everywhere. So there's a lot of like killing time, if you will, because we got to do things. So I thought I don't want them to be stuck on screens. So we got a box of those questions and we asked that. And some of the things are a little bit heavier and sad. And then, but there are some, but for the majority, it's just a giggle fest because it's like, what? And we usually have a playmate in there, somebody that we're driving around. And it's so fun because now they'll say, I did not say this. But the kids' friends, I heard them over say, well, she doesn't let you be on your phone when you're in her car.
Oh, I like that.
Said that. But that's what they took away from it. And so then when they get in the car, they're like, let's play the animal game. And we make up a funny imaginary animal or whatever it is. And so those are just tiny things that we can do, even in the midst of driving home our routines into our kiddos. I love all these permissions. Bob,
Yes,
tell us a few. Oh, go
what
ahead.
if you got a shoebox and put some fake dials and lights on it and all that and say, this is a jamming frequency. And so wherever the shoebox is, it's just ran by like 2 batteries and it just makes the lights go on. But you turn this on and it jams the frequency so nobody can get calls or make them or so there'd be
awesome?
something fun. Instead of making a rule, what I do is make a shoebox that has all these dials and gauges say, this is a jamming frequency, and so you can't get or make or whatever. Then it would be fun. And I bet you anything, when the kids grow up or they go to college and you mail that jamming frequency box to them, they're like, oh, I remember we had that. And they'll just delight in that it had pills and gauges that weren't connected to anything. So that idea there, what you did is that you got to where you wanted to get, but in a very winsome way. The other way is you make a big rule. And what the way that you were able to pull it off is that they found joy in that. They found like, there's this rule that you can't, whatever. So it isn't that you need to, create something every time, but you can do it with joy in a way that makes people feel this. In the scriptures, it's referred to as the aroma of Christ, that you just smell it in the air. It's like the cookies in the oven. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. The aroma of Christ. That's beautiful. Okay, let's talk about a few of the devotionals in your new book. Again, when I was reading them, I'm like, gosh, you guys are going to love it. This podcast will actually release very close to the same week that the book releases. So you'll be able to buy it right after listening here. You're going to love it. I love the concept of measure twice, cut once. Tell us about that devotional.
Oh, yeah. That's that whole idea in carpentry. Because you just can't uncut something, right? So, and I could turn a $30 piece of wood into a $2 piece of wood. Eddie, get me near a table saw. I won't be able to count to more than 7.5. But the idea is to think through this thing, but don't get stuck in an endless eddy of introspection. To say whatever it is, small, medium, or large, and maybe chunk up your ideas into those. To say, what are small ideas? Like, or just a little win that I can have. Instead of just raking the leaves on my lawn, what if I rake the leaves on my neighbor's lawn as well? What if we do like a big pile right in between our 2 houses and then have everybody jump in it? Because they're already kind of in the vicinity, like all the leaves will stay kind of generally there. But to make something, that would be a small win. You could say a medium thing, like an ambition that you've had for your community or a little bit larger one for your family, or maybe it's a personal goal that you want to write a book or you want to whatever. But you say, well, I'm going to make some headway on that. I'm just back about a week and a half ago from Uganda, and we had a small goal, which is start a small school. And then over time, it got bigger and bigger. And we just broke ground on a university. So these 1,500 kids living on campus at this like city now. We built 70 buildings, and like that takes a minute to get done. But the fun part was saying that we want giraffes. And so that feels like a big goal because it's a big animal. And the reality is we just wanted to have something that wouldn't bite people and be hard to lose.
Yes.
So you would think a big goal, well, like who owns all the giraffes? Well, the president of Uganda. There's 2,740 of them. And now there's only 2,736 because we got 6 giraffes.
Nice.
And then we want to make baby giraffes. We're like going to be playing Barry White music or something at night. So you could have like a big goal and chunk it up into, instead of moving from just like gee whiz, like kind of things, to say, hey, what would be my next step to do that? Who would I write to? The president wouldn't meet with you, but the first lady would. And when we met her and started talking draft, she literally ran across their version of the White House to get him and brought it back. You have got to hear this. And we walked out with our draft. So what I want us to do is to pick those small wins, a pile of leaves, a medium win. Let's record some of the things around you, head on a swivel. And then go for some big stuff just because it'd be fun, not to talk about, and it is fun to talk about, but more fun because that would be kind of lasting. If we could get that flywheel spinning, then maybe some kids, we can go from diapers to doctorate.
That's amazing. Another story in there that made me really giggle was the one about your friend Doug and the pellet gun.
Oh, that guy's
Do you remember?
Everybody's got a friend like Doug. Like, it's just like, no brains, no headache. Like, literally, it's like ready, shoot, aim. And people would say even more about me, like to have like this nutty person. And yet, those are the ones that are the people that have informed my faith. They've identified the need. They've just made like life and faith so much more approachable because they didn't know it, but they were actually just dropping all kinds of wisdom. But you would say in the nuttiest of circumstance, he's a guy that I'd say faith became important to me because he was just real and fallible and messed up. And we'd gone shooting pellet guns, and I was the next tin can. And he shot me like in me. And I remember as we're putting like mouthwash and got some tweezers like in my belly trying to get this thing out. It's not like a paintball welt. It's like in me. And then he starts telling me about Jesus. I'm like, you shot me. I didn't think that was okay to do, but evidently there's something really beautiful about people. Instead of seeing a weakness, what if we see a virtue? There's a guy named Diogenes. He's the founder of cynicism. And Diogenes would walk around Athens at high noon each day with a lamp lit. And people would say, Diogenes, why is your lamp lit? It's like high noon. And he said, I'm looking for virtue. And so cynicism, like if you've met a cynic, they would like roll their eyes and talk about Southwest Airlines or the eggs or whatever. But the cynics originally were people that lived a little bit apart. Think about you living out in the country a little bit. Just say, you know what, I'm just going to live a little bit apart from some of the crazy. And what they did is they spent their days looking for virtue. I could see you as a modern day Diogenes. From living a little bit apart, they look for virtue in people. So instead of saying words of correction to young felon Doug, what if we said instead, like, he's a guy that actually got it right. He knew a joy and he messed up like us, but he also had a really keen perspective on life that I'm still informed by and encouraged by today.
Yeah, as alongside a ton of the Bible characters, as you mentioned in your devotional, like we're not perfect human beings, and Jesus still walked, like he's the frequent word you say, adjacent to him.
Yes.
Like, all right, well, let's do this together. So
getting in the blast radius of people that aren't like you. There's different times in our yearly cycle or the cycles we have as a country where people are a little bit on edge. And so instead of going there to try to fix it, why don't we look for virtue? To say, what are some of the virtues that I might disagree with the conclusion, but what's something virtuous about your life? It's virtuous to be respectful. It's virtuous to be to hold a position. It's virtuous to not only just hold a position, but entertain other positions because you're looking for virtue in them. And if that isn't going light on doctrine, it's not going light on important issues. It's just going big on important stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, how can we maintain this childlike wonder in our spiritual life? Because, and you've referenced it several times, it's not that we're trying to be silly in those types of things. No, this is just looking and anticipating. One of the most beautiful words I think that I've been reflecting on over the last 6 months is expectant. And it literally changes your face shape when you say the word expectant, because you look up and you look out and you're like, okay, what am I expecting? How can we apply sort of that word expectant in our everyday alongside this whimsy?
Yeah. This is the beginning of the book of Acts. It says Theophilus, which means lover of God. So Theophilus, look for many convincing proofs that Jesus is still alive. And so like that idea of head on a swivel, people are still looking for Jimmy Hoffa. I think there's people still looking for Jesus to say, like, is there some evidence that God is in the move in my neighbor who's caring for somebody who's ill, my other neighbor who has suffered a big loss, and my other neighbor who has kids that are in first grade, and my other neighbor in my work person that has either a big celebration or a kind of a gut punch in life. But getting your head on a swivel, and and we don't need Bible verse for everything, but it's Philippians 2:20, and it's Paul talking about Timothy. He said, Timothy's a guy who takes a genuine interest in other people's welfare. So that idea, to your point about being expectant, like not just hoping and expecting things for myself, and I want nothing better than if somebody came in here with a gallon of Dippin' Dots. I'd be so stoked. That's worth some money too. Like you can peddle some Dippin' Dots if you can keep them from melting. But to think for other people's welfare, like can I start looking in the people that I work adjacent to, in the people that I live adjacent to, in the person that plants the seed, who grows the food, who bags the grocery, who prepares the food, who if we can just follow like that chain, maybe as we're giving grace, like think about literally pause about the person that planted the seed, whether they're from this country or another one, for the person who harvested the lettuce, for the person who did that. If you just do that, I think you're going to lift your game a little bit more. You're going to take a greater interest in the person that just served you, or the person that's bussing the table, or the person that that parked next to you and was careful and didn't bang their door into your car. You just notice these things instead of being hyper vigilant, saying like I'm surrounded by like these people, and you bang my door and all that. But to be so grateful for all the people that didn't. Putting a happy face. It's like just to say living with your word expectation. But not the expectation that my needs will be met, my expectation that you perform, my expectation of my kids that they would do their homework, but my anticipation and expectation that there's some really beautiful things right around the corner.
Yeah, I'm glad you broke that down, because yes, I don't mean expect it in like your own needs, but expect it on what Jesus can do when you open your eyes and you look around you and all those fun things. I just came away with so many good ideas. So stay tuned, encouragers, as I put out some of these whimsy. They will not be as good and as awesome as Bob Goff, but I've got some ideas too. I'm thinking of my mailman. I'm thinking of our bus drivers. We do a lot of things for those guys because I think those are the most routine, mundane jobs ever. So if we were able to entertain them, I show up in costume pretty frequently to pick the kids up from school, just so that it's just like a Wednesday that's dreary and rainy, but if mom shows up in her blow up chicken, they'll remember okay, there's still stuff to delight in, even in a long Wednesday day.
Isn't that it? At the end of the day, we're going to end up in a jar, or I don't know, an hourglass for me. I've ruled out snow globe.
Okay.
It's too murky. But at the end of the days, we're going to leave people our memories. We're going to leave people our friends. We're going to leave this. There's I was hearing somebody talk about this phrase, like be not afraid, is in the scriptures 365 times. And indeed it is, depending on your translation. And we remember that because, how ironic, one for every day. But the word remember is in the scriptures 8,620 times. This is why I can pass a bar exam, any state, anytime. Just remember stuff. I just do. know why I do, but a lot of us are geared towards remembering, and yet we spend a weird amount of time forgetting the things that God wanted us to remember. And so, what say today, like at the end of the day, if children are around the table, to just say, "Hey, what do you remember about today?" And then ask them, "What do you remember for a year ago from today?" Like, what's something you remember? Do you remember even something 5 years ago? And a lot of us just forget all this stuff. And it's because that's why I have like a tendency to write things down, because otherwise I won't remember them. And I want to actually kind of remember. I want us to like spend some time. That's out of Deuteronomy. When you wake up in the morning, when you're walking by the way, when you lay down at night, when you get up in the morning, tie them on your forehead, wrap them on your hands. Like, remember these things that God sent. And so maybe even at like whether it's a dinner around the table game of, hey, remember when, and then somebody pulls the memory out. Or maybe throughout their day to say, I'm going to document this stuff because I want to tell my kid, maybe at their rehearsal dinner,
Mhm.
remember when you whatever, lit the car on fire, I'm going to kill you. Yeah.
I love this idea too, because it's something that I talk about with the kids is like, just when you remember something or you write something down, or, you know, you can make even fancy and journal it, but you are collecting data of things that worked or things that brought you joy. And so I do think it's important to reflect on them and remember, because now you have data points of like, hey, that actually did work, or that did make me feel joyful. Maybe I need to return to that if it's you're in a funk or whatever. It's like, wait, I've got a bunch of data, which I know is the ugliest word ever, but I've got a bunch of data that shows me I can find joy in the everyday, and that part of what this person is saying about me is not true, because I have data of what is true. And so I do love the idea of writing things down.
And flipping through your lived experiences, like making those accessible. They say, I do remember the first time I lost a tooth. I do remember my first car. I do remember. And it isn't just a pop quiz to say if you remember that, but to say, do you remember how you like really didn't enjoy that car because it infrequently like started, like,
Yeah.
and as infrequently it came to a full stop. But then you think back about it, you say, that was a good car. And at the
Right.
time, you're like pounding the steering wheel saying, I hate this car. But then actually you look back on it, and it's not to be like, yippee skippy and put a happy face on things. But if you remember how God showed up in that time where you were feeling really lonely, feeling really isolated, and how somebody came along and said the right thing at the right time. And then that might give me, as I've got my head on a swivel today, saying, I'm going to do that for Rose. She's our mail carrier, and she's not particularly detailed. So the mail ends up, generally in the zip code, but not certainly in our mailbox. But I'm just going to remember with joy just how fun she is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for being our guest today, Bob. Encouragers, you have got to go out and get his book, Catching Whimsy. It's a devotional for the whole year. If you were reminded every day of these little tiny acts that we can do adjacent to our faith and to be the aroma of Christ, how much better a year would be when we keep reflecting on that. I can't wait to read it myself and for my children to read it alongside me as well. Bob, we always ask our guest, how can you encourage the encouragers?
Oh, here's the deal. If you want to live a noteworthy life, and I do, not noteworthy so other people talk about me, but just so engaged, then you got to take notes. So, get the devotional or not, but why don't you start writing your stories down? So why don't you, instead of like reading mine, why don't you write yours and start capturing those things that are happening today? And if there's a verse that comes to mind, this doesn't need to be this big theological thing, just that idea about loving your enemies, and say like, oh, there's a guy named Billy, or there's this guy. It's just like, oh my gosh, he cusses like a sailor. But I can pick up the general gist of what he's saying. I get the gist of that. And to say, so what I did was, and then think of something really beautiful in somebody's life. Write that down so you remember. And it isn't so that you get a little golf clap here, but that we, on the other side of heaven's veil, that these will be eternity spent remembering the things that happen during this time. Maybe that's the promise of the scripture that it sounds like this accounting, it sounds like getting audited, but it's actually this time to reflect and remember about how God showed up and how you showed up.
Yeah. And it'll be the perfect season to do this as this releases in the month of December. There is a little bit of more whimsy in the air, if you will, with the holiday spirit. So just remind yourself that, everyone is going to feel lighter. This is a perfect chance and opportunity to start practicing it. So then in the month of January, especially here in the Midwest, you still got a little bit of it left, you guys. Thank you so much, Bob, for being a guest on The Encourager. Until next time, Encouragers, we got this because he's got us. Thanks so much for tuning in. If the Encourager podcast has helped or encouraged you in any way, please subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star review. And then help us spread the message of encouragement and hope by sharing the podcast with others. Ready to bring more organization and joy into your life? The Encourager Academy helps you harmonize your home and work life through our online course and coaching programs. Our 5-system approach, me, food, family, work, and home, tackles your biggest obstacles, offering lifetime access to video lessons and guided worksheets. Learn at your own pace with practical tools and strategies. Enroll now at encourageracademy.com and use code WeGotThis for $50 off. Are you ready to finally create systems that help you thrive in both home and work life? Join my 10-week coaching cohort designed for busy women like you. Together, we'll create customized, foolproof systems for managing your home, business, and personal life with joy and purpose. With live coaching, practical tools, and a supportive community, you'll leave feeling organized, confident, and in control. Don't wait. Spots are limited to 10 women. Visit encouragerpodcast.com to apply.
Everyone wants to change the world. Capital Ministries is doing just that, one heart at a time, by creating disciples of Jesus Christ among political leaders in the U.S. and foreign nations. For more than 25 years, founder Ralph Drollinger has written Bible studies specifically for public servants. Study along with us and learn what the Bible says about capitalism, communism, abortion, same-sex marriage, and other contemporary issues. Subscribe and follow us at lifeaudio.com or search Capital Ministries on your favorite podcast platform.